Yo, what is up guys? It's Bob Kronos and we're back with another video. So today I'm gonna be starting a new series where it's gonna be like a free-to-play tutorial, or just a beginner's tutorial in general, as I am a 100% free-to-play player. I'm just gonna give you guys my insight on the game so far. And yeah, so let's get into it. I haven't been posting for a while, for like a couple days now because I had a lot of tests in my classes this week, but we're gonna get straight into it. So, whenever you're first starting the game, you're gonna have the pretty cool cutscene at the very start where Elaine gets chomped up, and then you're jumped to a screen where you're to choose between four different champions, and these four champions are these are all four starter champions, and they're all gonna be rare. So you have the Kale in Dark Elves. In the Orcs, you have Gaelic. In the High Elves, you have Elaine. And in the Sacred Order, you have Aethel. So, for this first episode, I'm basically going to be going over these four champions and which one you guys should pick and why. So, we'll start off with the worst one out of the whole bunch. In my opinion, I think Galek is probably the worst starter that you could pick. I know he's like in a lot of the commercials and he's in like the cover art for a lot of Raid Shadow Legends stuff. He's kind of like the face of the game almost. But compared to the other champions, he isn't really that great. I don't think he might not be the worst. The next one on the list, I think him and the next person on the list are very similar in like strength whenever you first start the game. So we have his A1, which is attack 2 times, which is like, okay, it's like an average A1, I would say. On his A2, you have attack all enemies, has a 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit, extra 15. Places a 30% increased speed buff for 2 turns. This increased speed buff is really good for the early game, and it's really good for campaign farming. All of the starter champions are going to be really great for campaign farming whenever you're first starting out the game, which is really important because that is going to be your main goal at the very start of the game. It's just to get through all the difficulties of a campaign, except for Nightmare. Nightmare is more of like a mid to end game kind of thing. So yeah, you want to definitely get through Brutal, and you'll definitely be able to get through Brutal with these three champions. And then you have his A3, attacks 4 times at random, has a 30% chance of placing a decreased defense debuff for 2 turns, has a 30% chance of placing a 60% decreased debuff for 2 turns if the target has more than 2 debuffs. So it has a 30% chance of placing the decreased defense, but it goes up to 60% if you have the 2 debuffs. Now he doesn't have any debuffs in his kit innately, but you can definitely pair him with some champions that do, and you're probably gonna have a couple champions that he have debuffs, whether it be like poison or decreased defense or anything else like that. But we'll go into debuffs and buffs in a later episode. But you can increase the buff chance to 40%, which I mean, it isn't extremely high, and I think this is his weak point in that his third skill, it just attacks at random, and like, so if you're like in a full wave of like minions or champions that you're fighting against, you can't really target this at one person or at like all four of them. If this was like an attack all enemies, it would definitely be a lot better. But even then, there's a better champion for your 60% decreased debuff that you can get literally in the campaign, and we can maybe talk about her in a later episode as well. So his Hellraiser ability is going to be really good for clearing the campaign if you can build him with a lot of attack. All the star champions have pretty good base stats. That is going to be his main ability, but he's just like overall just in my opinion. I think he's still the worst compared to the next one now that I'm thinking about it. So now we have Elaine. I actually haven't gotten Galek yet, so but now we have Elaine, who is part of the High Elves. She's definitely looking pretty cool. She's actually If you guys haven't watched the intro yet, spoiler alert, but she's the one that gets eaten at the very end, which kind of sucks. But let's look into her kit. So we have attacks one enemy, places an extra hit if the attack is critical. So this is obviously a lot weaker than Galex because Galex needs or Elaine needs that critical in order to place an extra hit. But if you build her with 100% crit, then both of these hits are obviously going to be critical, which is going to be really nice. You have like an attacks 2 enemy critical. So then we have attacks 1 enemy and then attacks all enemies. Has a 15% extra chance of him placing a critical hit. Places a 30% increased crit rate buff on this champion for 3 turns if a target is killed. So what you can do is you can build her up to 85% crit chance, and every champion usually starts off at like 15%. So if you get it up like 70% with some crit rate gloves and some other substats, you can get this up to 85% chance. And then with this extra 15% chance, it'll always proc its extra crit rate. And after you have this extra crit rate, you're always going to be hitting that double shot on your auto, which is some pretty good synergy. And it's a 3-turn increased crit rate, so that's also really good. But you do have to kill a target. Now we go on to her third ability, attacks all enemies 2 times. So she has 2 AoE abilities for her skills, which is really good for clearing the campaign, and she's also an actually super decent arena nuker. So yeah, we have arena defense and arena offense. We have a 4.7 rating, so she's her AoE skills actually do hit for a lot, especially this attacks 1 enemy on a lightning arrow. So the attacks 1 enemy actually does scale pretty high. Valley of Death also does a lot of damage. If you don't kill her on the first turn, she can actually pump out like so much damage. Unless she's faster than you, then you might just be screwed from the start. But yeah. Oh, I also forgot to mention that all of the starters start off with the same aura, which is 15% ally HP in all battles. So that is universal between all 4 of them. Now we go into the Sacred Order, which is Aethel. Aethel is actually the starter that I started off with, and I was like watching some reviews of way back when the game first came out of some YouTubers, and that's why like they were all saying that Aethel was the best, but I didn't even think about like watching like recent videos, and there's actually a new best starter champion, which we will go over lastly, but by process of elimination, you guys probably already know what it is. So Aethel, I think, is the second best starter champion, and let's go over her skills. So we have an A1 that attacks 3 times, has a 75% chance of placing a 25% weaken for 2 turns on the last hit only. So you can book this up to 100% chance, and it's an attack 1 enemies 3 times, which is already better than Galek and Elaine. And this attacks 3 times is also really good for the Fire Knights, which can be a super difficult dungeon whenever you're really early into the game. So she can definitely help you with that dungeon. And her weaken is just an added plus. Weaken can be used in literally any part of the game. Dragon's Lair, Clan Boss, which is one of the most important parts of the game. Weaken's just an overall really strong buff. So to have that on an A1, especially a 3-hit A1, is like ridiculous. And then we have her AoE on her A2, attacks all enemies, has a 15% extra chance of inflicting a critical hit. So if you build her up to 85% crit, then you can get 100% crit on her AoE, which is a lot like Elaine's, except she doesn't have that like attacks 1 enemy and then attacks all enemies. So it is weaker than Elaine's A2 in that sense. But it still does a lot of damage, especially with this next skill, which it synergizes with. So Higher Blessing. She places a 25% increased attack buff on herself, which is the weaker version, but it is like still pretty good. Places a 60% increased defense, which is also the weaker version, but it's still really good on this champion for 2 turns. If this champion's current HP is less than 50, gains an extra turn. This gains an extra turn is really good. So if we book this down to a 4-turn cooldown, and then she gains an extra turn, it'll be already down to a 3-turn cooldown right when she casts it. And synergizes really well with this one because with Divine Blades, because this extra turn, if this is like on a 1-turn cooldown, like you just casted it like 2 turns ago, and it's on a 1-turn cooldown, you can just cast your Higher Blessing, get that extra attack, and then since you have an extra turn, you'll be able to proc your AoE immediately, which helps you clear through campaign a lot faster as well. Aethel also has some really good speed. I think she had higher speed compared to the other two, but some of them do have higher attack. But yeah, that is basically all of Aethel's kit. It's really simple. Your only two attack abilities are your A1 and your A2, and then you have this buff for yourself on your A3, which gives you an extra turn, which synergizes really well with your Divine Blades. So that is Aethel. And then we come down to the best champion that you can pick for a starter account, and that is Kayle. Now, Aethel used to be the best because apparently Weaken used to affect poison, which is a really strong debuff in this game, and since it like increased poison damage, then that's why Aethel was considered one of the best ones. But now they added poison sensitivity to the game, so that's like the new Weaken kind of. And if we just look at Kayle, he has 62,000 reviews, probably one of the highest in the game, if not the highest. The others all had like 20, Galik had like 18, Elaine had a little more than 20k. So it's pretty universally wide known that Kayle is one of the best starter champion to pick. And unfortunately I did not pick him, but hopefully you guys make the right choice and do pick him if you are starting out right now. So we have the A1, attacks one enemy, has an 80% chance of placing a 2.5 poison for 2 turns. Can be booked up to 100% chance, so his A1 is always going to be placing that poison over and over and over again, which is really good. So if you do not have a poisoner whenever you first start out in the game, it's going to be really hard to get damage off on your clan boss. So it is recommended that you probably book out an Outlaw Monk. It's an uncommon, super cheap to book out, and it places 2 5% poisons for 2 turns, and it's going to be on a low cooldown. But if you have Kayle, you'll notice that your clan boss damage is going to be astronomically higher than most other starters, because he does have the poison, and he also has a poison on his A3, which we'll talk about. So he has 2 poison skills, which are super good for the clan boss, and the reason poison is so good is because it does percent damage based on max health. So on bosses, that deals an insanely high amount of damage, especially on clan boss. Let's look at his A2. This is his AoE. Attacks all enemies, has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit, which is very similar to the other starters. Fills this champion's turn meter by 25% chance for each enemy killed. This is really good. And the reason being is whenever you are in campaign and you clear one of them, let's say you can't clear all of them, your turn meter is already going to be up 25%. And then if there's like 4 people in the wave, it'll be up to like 75% if you killed 3 of them. So you'll be able to get your next turn off immediately, and this definitely shortens all your campaign runs by a lot. Alright, and then we have his A3. Attacks 4 times at random, has a 40% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. 5% is the stronger one, can be booked up to 50% chance and a cooldown of 4. Attacks 4 times at random. If you use this on a boss, it's going to attack that boss, because that boss is going to be the only one that's there, like Dragon Slayer or Fire Knight. Kayle's A3 is really good for Fire Knight, but he's probably not the best champion to use for Fire Knight because your A1 only hits 1 time. But we can go into the dungeons in one of the later episodes as well. But because of these 2 poison skills, he is really good for clan boss early game. He's also just really great for progression. His attack scaling is really good. He can be your nuker in arena. He does a load of damage in arena. Like, if we go to look at arena, almost everybody has their Kayle as their nuker. We have Kayle here, Kayle here. Even this guy who has like a power of 74,000 still uses his Kayle as a nuker. We have Kayle here, Kayle here, Kayle here, Kayle here. Like, literally everybody has Kayle. You see like one Elaine, and then me over here using Aethel. But I do have a Skull Crown now, so that is my team. Now, I did start off using Aethel, and I mean, I don't completely regret it, but I did manage to pull a Kayle in my most recent Ancient Shard pull, if you guys watch that. So I might try to max this guy out next. I'm not sure yet. I feel like it might slow down my progression a lot if I tried to 6-star him right now. So I might hold off on him, but I am not completely sure yet, because I think he would be a lot better for like literally every parts of the game almost. and just help in my progression a lot through Dragon's Lair and like everything else like that. So that is my review on the 4 starters. If you can, pick Kayle. If you've already picked your starter and it was one of the other ones, don't fret it. You can restart if you want to, but the other champions are going to be perfectly fine. I was able to complete as much of the game as I am right now with Aethel, and I didn't pull a Kayle until like a couple days ago. So you'll be completely fine with whatever starter you choose. They're all going to be great champions. They're like probably some of the best rares in the game. Which is really nice of like Plarium to like kind of give a boost to start off with, but I feel like they should give a lot more, to be honest. So yeah, I have pulled all of them except Galek, but I still think that he's probably not one of the best ones that you can pick. But I mean, he is a cool looking orc. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I'll be sure to keep on continuing this series, and next I'll probably go into what you should do first whenever you first have your account. So be sure to watch out for that and hit a subscribe if you can, and I will see you guys next time.